Guys, this is the session before lunch, and it's a serious topic. And I want to get started off real quickly just by a raise of hands. Who here has actually lost a case where you invested a lot of money, either lost a verdict, like Rongo and Bill back there at trial lawyers, but you've actually lost a case? Raise your hand real quick. Who here has been in a crisis where you actually got fired by a really good client or a referral source that actually bring you in a lot of business? Raise your hand. Not many. And who here has lost a key employee? A key employee that's actually caused harm. So most of you, I would assume, have suffered some type of crisis, right? What about this one? Is anyone in here brave enough to raise their hand? Have you ever suffered a financial crisis in your law firm where you have been in a situation where it's a key financial loss where you've actually caused you to lose your law firm? Okay, just one. I'm raising my hand also. So I can tell you, my name is Bill Umansky. I'm a lawyer in Orlando. I do criminal and personal injury. We run about a 30-person shop down in Orlando. I'm usually file line and lead docket. And I can tell you, just right off the bat, that I'm going to go over the next 30 minutes to try to give you 4 solid things that you can take away if your law firm is going through a crisis. And we do a little bit of some exercises so that you can kind of get that done. It's a serious talk, but if you follow the exercises I'm doing and maybe take some notes, mental notes, I can assure you that when you go through a crisis, I've been doing this 30 years, crisis after crisis after crisis, sometimes you go for 3 years, no crisis, and then there's a crisis. You'll have a good footprint for you to rely upon when you rely upon. So what I'd like to do is have you close your eyes for a second, if you would. So the door's open, and I'm just going to give you an idea. We're going to take you down the path real quick, but keep your eyes closed. And I'm going to tell you 4 things that we're going to go over. And then I'm going to take you through a little story. 1, you've got to be calm during the crisis. 2, you have to be present during the crisis. We're going to talk about what present really means. 3, you've got to be vulnerable, confident, and constant in your communication with your team. And 4, you've got to be able to prepare solutions, execute decisions, and not have analysis by paralysis. Now keep your eyes closed a little bit longer. I'll take you to the Eastern Front in Ukraine. Some of you are thinkers, maybe harder. Some of you are feelers, maybe easier. I want you to think about a woman, mother of 2 young children. Could be a husband. She's sitting in her house. She's about to serve dinner for her children. It's cold. It's cold outside, and it's even cold inside. She made chicken and vegetables, and even that's cold. It's been sitting on the stove, and she doesn't want to use the gas. She can smell the heavy stench of a burnout building hit by a drone strike right down the block. And she and you can hear the intermittent shuddering of incoming and outgoing artillery shells. The lights are flickering. The significant other, the other parent, man or woman, is on the front with instructions from the Army not to text her for the last week. Imagine that. She does not, or he does not know if their loved one is coming home. But she's got 2 kids. All right, you at the table? She's got 2 children. And she does not know, or he does not know what is going to happen next, whether their city's going to be saved or anything. But what she hears every night around 6 o'clock is the following over her TV. We got this. We're taking back cities. We're taking back territories. We're going to drive out the invaders. We are going to win this war. Slava Ukraine. Glory be Ukraine. You can open your eyes. That's her president, Zelensky. And her president is delivering, in the worst crisis you can imagine, the same message every night around the same time to his people. So, I want you to think about your office going through a crisis. And I want you to think about it in kind of the same analogy as a war, because there are going to be big crises that we suffer from. Imagine that your office is like that cold home, and imagine that your employees, even the leaders on your team are like your children. So you've got to keep the fear inside of you at bay, right? Keep it at bay, and you've got to keep it going for them, each and every one of them. So how do you do that? These are 3 practical approaches on how you're going to project calmness and stability during a crisis. First thing that you do, does anyone meditate? Does anyone have a go-to every day, like the gym, or writing, poetry, praying? Anyone do that? Now's the time to do that even more. So every morning before you hit work, physically or virtually, think about this. And think about this during a crisis, because discipline is important. I can tell you that my team, some of my team is here, they'll tell you I'm not always calm. I have to do this every morning. So whether it's a passage in some spiritual religious book, whether it's a podcast, whether it's an author, whether it's an Instagram meme or a TikTok video, it doesn't really matter. Make sure that you get your mindset straight before you hit work. If you don't, you can't get your team's mindset straight, right? In order to do that, for me, mine is music. Usually if I pick a good song, I usually use Sia when I'm going through a crisis. I can't pronounce her name, is it Sia? You're unstoppable, I hate to admit it, but it's regular. And yours could be meditation. But if you don't do that during a crisis, and I can tell you when I don't do it, I show up at work and I'm like this. Try not to, get your mindset straight. Second thing is, it's going to be like, oh really, a mantra? Well, what do you think Slavia, Ukraine, Georgia, Ukraine is? Get a mantra. It's simple, you can remember it. So I'm going to give you one. We're going to get through this together. Now, we have 5 corporate values. Power, which is positivity, ownership, work as a team, evolutionary, which is adaptable, relentless. So you can work that in every day. Here's your mantra, and then you slide it in differently. We're going to get through this together. We're a positive team. We're going to get through this together because we're relentless. We're going to get through this together because we're adaptable. Use that mantra, stick with it during the crisis. And the last one, which is the long of the third part about being calm, is how you deliver it. Well, I would submit to you, if it's a big financial crisis like that last one, do it daily. There's different delivery channels, we can talk about it later, but do it daily. Lesser crisis, maybe every other couple of days. But these 3 things that you can do to do the first thing, which is to project calmness and stability during the crisis. So, second thing is being present. Life is not always about calm waters, right? And I'm going to give you a little story. I don't know if any of you heard about Captain Schettino. You want to hear about Francisco Schettino? Sorry, Bill, it's Italian. Costa Cruise Line. He was a captain of a 4,000 person ship. And several years ago, that ship hit some rocks. You want to hear the story about the captain leaving the ship? That was the captain. And he left the ship. It was rumored that he actually was on board that ship. And he was trying to impress a lover of his on board, a dancer on the ship, when he struck the shot, when he struck the rocks, and it started sinking. That's the picture. 300 people died, 30 people died, sorry. But there were 300 people that were on board when he just took off. Back then, when that story came out, it was years ago, and I thought about when the story came out, I wondered, why did he leave the ship? We had young kids, we were cruising all the time. Of course, we think about that sometimes, and I don't take a Bahama cruise, it's a little rocky. So we did think about that, and I thought, why would the captain with 10 years of nautical training, and that motto, the captain never leaves the ship, leave the ship? I didn't think about it again until we had a recent crisis, and I started thinking about why that captain left the ship. Maybe he was selfish, maybe he was scared. We don't really know because we don't have his mind. But when I had this past crisis, I started thinking back to the captain. I started thinking, maybe he left that ship. Think about this crisis, the crisis that we have going on now. Maybe he left that ship early because he was the cause of the shipwreck. Now, why is that important? Because the second thing I wondered is, as a captain, when things are going great, they're not doing the steering. I don't know how many of you know that. But they have staff captains, quartermasters, they have other people steering the ship. Maybe docking or undocking if someone famous is on board, but they're not doing anything. Just like who has a CEO, CFO, any kind of director of marketing, you guys have leadership teams at all that you're building, right? Well, like a good CEO, like a good captain, when things are good, you're kind of leading from the rear, right? You trust your team. At least good leaders lead from the rear. And you let your team go in front of you. But I started thinking about that ship and my own crisis, and how when we had a major crisis, about being present. Think about this. For us, crisis happens, and you're already in the behind. You're standing from behind. Your leaders are looking forward during this crisis. They're worried and they're nervous, but they're trying to lead. And perhaps you don't want to be present. Now, what does that look like? You start showing up for some meetings. Maybe you stay on vacation a day or two. Maybe you need a mental health day because you're going through a crisis and you're trying to lead the team. In this situation, I thought about, and what snapped me back, why I did not abandon my own ship, is I really thought, what did the captain really lose? What did he lose when he left that ship? More importantly, if you have a crisis, this is going to be a question for one of you, two of you, not going to pick on you, but if you raise your hand, I'll be happy. What would you lose if your law firm went through a crisis, which is worse, you're losing your law firm business? What would you lose? Anyone else? Integrity is the answer. What? Respect. Anyone else? So you guys kind of get it. You know, there are people that say, oh, you lost his freedom, went to prison, you lost your station, you lost your job. The most important thing that captain lost was his dignity, integrity, or self-respect. And I can tell you, after practicing 30 years, there are certain several moments in your life. I'm a believer in everything and forgiveness, but there are certain moments in your life you can't read that. You cannot regain your dignity and self-respect when you lose it on your team and abandon ship. So being present, this is really one of the critical ones, is how can you be present? What I think is really important about being present, it's simple, but believe me, if you've ever gone through a crisis and you're thinking of going out that back door, show up. Show up to your meetings. If you're not usually making opinions and you're not talking much because you trust your leaders, now's not the time to start going crazy, but start voicing more opinions. Start taking an active role. Start being involved in decisions and showing people that you're involved. Go to some department head meetings that maybe you're not normally at. Sit down, listen. Make sure that you're giving encouraging words to your leaders. They are like your children. Sorry, William, Randy, and Jeff. But during a crisis, they are like your kids. Give them positive encouragement, whatever way you can. And also all the other members on your team. If you work virtually, call Zoom conferences with leaders, either together or individually. You have to touch as many people in your organization as you can. Second thing is, in a crisis, it's time to get your hands dirty. What does that mean, getting your hands dirty? Anyone? Right. So, I don't know about you, but there's a lot of us who moved on to certain things and we don't get our hands dirty anymore. We don't steer the ship, we just oversee things. When we had a sales crisis, our sales were down. We lost a couple of key sales employees. I had to step up. And I'm okay in sales, not great at sales. I didn't do this with panic. But I actually sat in at the sales meetings. I sat for additional training with them. I handled chases, got on the call and handled chases. And if anyone chases leads, does anyone, when they first started, didn't have a reception, you chase leads, you call, and they don't call you back, and you chase them again? I got on the phone. We're a criminal firm and a personal injury firm. Criminal, you have to chase a lot. And when I closed a lead, I didn't take credit, but I explained that we're doing a great job together, go team, and everything else. But the important thing is I lit up the Slack channels with the efforts that I was making to show them that as a leader, I was getting my hands dirty. The last thing about being present is taking punches with your team. During COVID, did anyone, most of you guys were in business during COVID? Did any of you concerned or had to let go of employees? Okay. I remember grading my employees from A to E. I learned it at some seminar. And I was really concerned, and I didn't want to let anyone go. I didn't want to let anyone go. But I was worried, right? Criminal was down, no cars were on the road, all that. It's not popular to talk about COVID, but this was a big crisis. But what I did at that point in time was I called my attorneys into our office, and I asked them if they'd be willing to reduce their salaries to about $45,000, $50,000. Now we have 8 or 9 attorneys, and think about it. Some of them have been attorneys for 30 years, first-year associate, and we had some board-certified lawyers in between. I asked them to make that sacrifice. But more importantly, and my wife's been a lawyer in the firm for 30 years also, we made that sacrifice with them. But we were also very transparent, because some of you may be thinking, well, just pay yourself a salary and take the back end distribution. No. We said, look, our books are open. We will not pay us any more than anyone else makes here until we get back on track. And I could tell you that. Those lawyers are still with me. I get very emotional about this because they will leave and open their own firms. I've had some who stay for me 8, 9 years now, 6, 7 years. But if you take punches with your team during a crisis, they will remember you. Even you can transform their hearts into their loved ones. So during a crisis, I would suggest that is really important. And talking about pain, by the way, I've got to talk about vulnerability real quick. Third thing in a crisis is clarity of communication. That's the vulnerable, confident, and constant. What does that mean? Well, I used to be a trial lawyer, and it's so long ago I don't remember. I've been practicing 30 years. When I was a trial lawyer, my first 10 years, 15 years, I gotta tell you, there are so many seminars now, and I don't believe any of them. I know about EI, I take emotional intelligence stuff, but lawyers, even back then I had that EQ quotient, but really, most lawyers that I know, even young trial lawyers, they lead, we talk about their offices, they lead from fear. They don't want to lose. At least I didn't want to lose. We heard Angela Duckworth talk about grit. I wasn't going to lose a trial. Back then I had a much larger ego. But by leading from fear, if I had a trial in place and there was an object, a person, a paralegal, a judge, opposing counsel, I didn't care. I was going to get what I wanted. And then I'd sit there in front of the jury and be vulnerable. It was all fake. But the reality is, when you become CEO of the law firm, you can't lead from fear, right? You can't. You've got to lead out of love. And what that means is you encourage your employees and you make sure that you do a lot of those things to build people up. And I can tell you when a crisis hits, for some of us in this room, and some of you may be more advanced than I am emotionally, I revert back to old trial lawyer mode. Now, I have not allowed that to get out into my space. But imagine seeing an employee that normally when things are good, they're not living up to your standards, you coach them up, you have the time to be patient with them. I can tell you when I go through a major crisis, I'm sitting there, and when someone makes a big mistake, I'm like, do your job, right? You're nodding your head, but like, do your job. I could even scream it louder. Normally I'm on a larger stage and I would love to scream it because it makes me feel good, but I never ever say it. I think it, I feel it right down to the core, but I never say it. Because as you know, if you lose your cool and you open your mouth, you know what? You lose your employee. They may still work for you, but you lost them. And even if times are good, they may leave. But more importantly, you've lost their respect. So clarity of communication during a crisis is really, really important. And I can tell you quickly a crisis that we went through and how we handled that using communication. Who got hit by the proximity update? Just one person in this room? Two? Okay, does anyone know what the proximity update is? No. So I can just tell you that we had tried local offices, opening on these virtual offices and actually physical hard offices, and we failed at it. But then we decided to go with a single office policy, and we were dominating. I mean, in Orlando and Central Florida, we were probably the top lead user for cases. It's kind of 100 to 120 cases a month, just criminal, which is pretty unheard of usually for a one office case. Proximity update hit, and overnight, leads were like down. Half. Cases down, money down. And even worse than that was that we were thinking like our overhead's $400,000 to $500,000 a month, give or take a month. So imagine that you have less than half of that coming in for new money, and it's dipping into reserves. Your PI firms, they have reserves. And you're concerned because you can't make payroll with your new money. Anyone agree that that's a crisis? Yes. I ask you something, would you guys feel vulnerable if you couldn't make payroll with new money? Would you be able to actually communicate that to your team like in a vulnerable way? Because that's what we had to do. So we basically had to tell people, essentially, look, and I gotta tell you, like being vulnerable, I can be vulnerable, but it's something that I have to work on. And I can tell you that before I could even get an office to be vulnerable, I had to kind of embrace the suck, which is a military term saying, look, you're in a bad situation. A friend of mine who used to work in our sales department was a ranger in Fallujah and used to have to kick down doors. And I asked him many times, he used to work with me, I love this guy, he drives trucks now, and makes more money actually in the office of shoe boss than what he's waiting for all results. Before he had to kick down a door in Iraq, they knew that people were going to die. People on their team, possibly him. But how did they go in day after day to do that? They embraced the suck, which basically was like, look, I may die, this is what it is, and I gotta go through it. So I'd say a law firm price is probably not like life and death, maybe, but when you sit there embracing it, you understand, look, I've got a problem on my hands, I'm afraid, and I'm anxious. By doing that, you're able then to get your head straight so that you can then talk to your team. So what we did is we called an office-wide policy, office-wide meeting, and we were very vulnerable. I said, hey guys, I made a mistake. I invested in a single office policy, and as a result, our leads are down. They knew it, they could feel it. The lawyers' bonuses were slipping. Also, our salespeople, they have performance-based stuff that's not on fees, but typically on some kind of, they're induced by closing a deal. Everyone felt it. So we just opened up about it, and we were transparent about the money. We told them we didn't know what was going to happen. But during that meeting, we also told them that we were working on solutions. And we got specific. We're going to open local offices, although Jim was late, but we opened the local offices. We're going to invest money in other channels, like local service ads and other channels that were expensive and the margins were lower. Or at least we keep the cases coming in, so people were busy. And we told them what we were going to do. And we delivered that in a very calm, positive, reassuring way. But I can tell you, you cannot do like a one and done rah-rah speech. You can't go, hey, everything's gonna be great! And then you just kind of walk off into the corner. So that's the second point, is you've gotta have communication that's confident and constant. So practically speaking, we decided to display small victories. And what does that mean? Each of you in firms, when you have an employee who does a great thing, do you like to promote that? Yes, right? Do you do it every day? How about 2 times a week? How about 4 times a week? So when you're going through a crisis, especially, you've got to start displaying small victories. So this is how you do that. We opened a local office And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, Jeff, my director of marketing, like, okay, great. Is that gonna help you get cases like right now? You're an entrepreneur, you want cases now. But the rest of the office didn't know that. Hey, we opened a local office. Good job. You know, and when we got a case out of that local office, I'm thinking to myself, I need 10 cases from that office, 20 cases from that office, not one, but we celebrate. We have file line and lead docket, and by the way, they're great products. I love them, they're great and everything, but I'm also a very authentic guy. Like lead docket, yes, I can narrow down my leads, and yes, it makes it more efficient, all that's great. But how does lead docket or file line help me get more leads in to close cases? I need the lead flow. But we were pretty good at implementing software. Vinny and Randy here do that for other people in our firms, and we were implementing the software. And so whenever we implement some addition or some change, we let the team know. We built on those things as small victories. It was important because I really believe that, you know, Arnold said this right, confidence is caught, not taught. And what's important about that, and I skipped the slide, is the last thing is the channels that you deliver that information. This is practical approaches that you can do, and you're probably doing it already. If you got Slack channels, let people know what you're doing. If you have social media, obviously, put a post up about your team and then bring it in internally. Yes, you'd like your entire team to see your social if you're good, but sometimes your team doesn't care. So bring in those social posts about your team inside the firm. Do small acts of service. We did car washes. We did Publix gift cards. We did all kinds of things for our employees, which you all should do anyway, but we did more of, even though there wasn't new money coming in. We did Post-it notes, letters to people's mailboxes. Yes, you know what? Most people don't check mail anymore, but once in a while, a guy checks the mail and gets a letter from the boss, quietly, not even announcing it. You're doing a great job. They don't even say it, but it impacts them. We had a firm cruise. I don't have a picture up here, but I can tell you, we took a firm cruise, and I was like, man, we could use that money to get cases. And I said, no. My wife's like, we need that money for cases. I'm like, no. We took the firm on a cruise. We actually had a great time, and I really believe that that experience really helped our team members. We weren't faking anything. We were transparent about what's going on, but we still celebrated. So, we had solutions, and this brings me to the fourth part of my talk, and the last part of my talk. I want you to think about this. When you're making decisions and things are well, you usually make decisions on things, right? You should be making decisions not on emotion, right? You should be making on research, preparation, experience, and knowledge. But it's easy to make a decision because you have money coming in. What happens if you have to make a decision that if that decision failed, your firm fails and you're done? So that's why I like using this analogy. Imagine you're in your law firm, locked door, 5 minutes on the clock, and there's a ball, right? And you click the red wire and it accelerates the countdown clock, 5 minutes down to 0. You click the other wire, you're instantly detonated, you're dead. So maybe that doesn't matter, you're dead and you don't have to worry about it anymore. The third wire you cut is the one that maybe saves the day for you, and you're able to live another day so you get out of the office. And of course, what happens if you do nothing at all? Right, you die. So in a crisis, you know, you can't picture and you can't defuse a bomb or your crisis. You can't make a choice out of fear or emotion. So I want to give you some kind of practical things that we learned. When we were going through and things were coming, 100, 120 cases, maybe 3 to 4, 450 a month in income coming in, we were doing great. So we decided to leave our small, my SEO reps is here, so be careful. We decided to leave a small SEO company, which was really good. We chose a larger company that was 3 times more expensive. Why? We made a decision quickly. It was easy for us to make that decision. We want more service, more cases, and they are a good company that we went to. just remember this because it was just so horrible. So what happened is we signed the contract, which is going to start in January, February, and I think it's like in October, November. And the algorithm hits. Oh, that's great, you got a big company. No, first of all, the contract's not till January, February. My old company, what do you think they wanted to do to help us at this point? Right, exactly. Well, yeah, we did that. And he's my friend too. He used to work with me. He started a company that basically was a nicer version of that, but that's right. Then the new company, like Delaney, they're a great company, and they wanted to help us. But the reality is, a new company can't just take over your website and fix things, especially when we screwed up. They have to go through your links, you got to go through your site, they got to clean up stuff. So we were like, it was like, really, the algorithm was kind of like, the bomb was like, the algorithm up there was a bomb. Really, that signed contract with them was that locked door. Like, there was no going back, you had to go forward, and there was this limbo period. And then the company, rightfully so, starts giving us advice. You gotta open these global offices now. Open them, you gotta find them. Physical presence is not just virtual. Google made it a lot harder to do virtual stuff. You gotta get rent signed, contract signed. You gotta find these places. You gotta do it now. And I'm like sitting there going, we don't have new money coming. You gotta invest in local service and some other ads and spend some money digitally. $10, $20, $30, $40, $50,000, which is what we're spending now. So I'm like thinking, what do I do? So what I did do was I went to a third party. I won't tell you who. There's a guy out in Vegas that owns a X-rated site. Very good. I just could never hire him. Really good. He's like, yeah, they're right. You need to do it. You're going to be out of business. I did research our past SEO experience. We had SEO. I went to StomperNet 20 years ago, how to run your own SEO company. I don't really know much anymore, but I had past experience. And ultimately, I just made my gut decision, which is like, hey, we gotta do this. So literally, we cut that wire and we didn't bet. So, not yet. I said this, not yet. So, what did we do? When we made that decision, the one thing I did learn, and this is important, and I'm going to re-emphasize this with you guys, is you cannot make decisions based on fear, right? You can't. And I can tell you, there are going to be vendors all around. How many SEO vendors and how many vendors hit you up every single day for new stuff? Right? Yeah. So, if you're desperate, they'll take your money. So you can't. You got to really be thinking through these decisions and very, very quickly. And the last thing is you can't go down what ifs. So when you make these decisions, if you start going, what if I choose A, what if I choose B, you'll start going down rabbit holes. I can assure you. And it'll drive you crazy. So instead, what we did was we prepared solutions. We had a number of different kind of ideas of what we're going to do. And I want you to think about this. Just prepare them. Then you got to go based upon that training and experience. You've got to choose a solution, even though it could be the end of your firm or the end of your crisis or whatever. And then you execute. And you execute with the other three things we talked about. And if you do that, you don't look back. And that is one thing I can tell you. I made the decision and I haven't looked back. I'm too busy executing the decision. I'm too busy leading the ship so that whether it sinks or not, I can have my self-respect and dignity. And we're doing pretty good going through that solution. So I want to do something with you guys so you can remember this and really, really maybe think about these things when there's a crisis. This is a heavy talk, and my director of marketing wants me to be light and airy about stuff, so I'm going to be light and airy. So you have to be calm during a crisis. Be calm, be present, be vulnerable, and be decisive. And if you're going to promise to be calm, be present, be vulnerable, and be decisive, I'd actually like you to stand for just a moment. Yep, stand. You're going to remember this during a bad crisis or a good crisis. Now, this is the hard thing. As lawyers, sometimes we have a hard time being vulnerable with each other, but I actually like you to look to the person to the left and the person to the right of you. Because, okay, hold your eyes just for a second. Don't make weird looks at me. I'm just come over and I'm going to stare at you for a second. Man, his eyes are scary looking right at me. So I want you to actually think about this, because first of all, I'm going to applaud you, because you're going to do that, and you're going to remember this. But remember that each and every single one of you, whether you're competitors or not, whether you're in the same market or not, whether you're together, you are all living and dying by the sword, right? So for your families, for your clients, for your loved ones, significant others, your children, most of all. So and you're going to remember, look each other in the eyes and start applauding yourselves. I'm actually going to leave now. I got a standing ovation, I told you.